Alright, so earlier I posted the video about the controls and I called out the sensitivity and the issues with the Citation. I've done a number of flights in the Citation and I do love the Citation. It is a great jet. I'm going to pick the smaller one this time, or the older one. Yeah, I just think this is the not so fancy one. Alright, I'm not doing a crazy flight here. I'm just flying from Dubai down to Abu Dhabi. Should be a very short flight overall. Just enough to kind of fire up the engines and really get it going. So basically what I'm looking to show in this is on takeoff, once we get airborne, I'm just going to use some very basic autopilot, not going to do anything crazy, but I want to show kind of the difference. I'm still at my default minus 60 sensitivity across the board, and I'm just going to do a quick takeoff. On takeoff, I'm going to show you how sensitive this sucker is with just a little bit of input. So basically, you saw my sensitivity chart if you looked at the previous video, and what I'll do is I will pull the stick just so slightly up to the point that it engages the resistance. So there's the dead zone that we accommodated for, where I can move the sticks around and there's no problem, and then right when you get to the edge of the actual resistance is where the control surfaces should pop up and start to move. Now I know these jets have fairly decent maneuverability, but the time when you pull it just a little bit, the slats and the ailerons and the spoilers, all that stuff that goes up on the one wing should not just slam on the brakes so the plane goes into a barrel roll. When I first flew this plane, when I was back at my minus 20, minus 30 sensitivity, that's essentially what happened. It was ridiculous. And then I got a little more strict with it, and I did a flight. I mentioned it before. I went from Rocky Mountain Regional out to Aspen in the Learjet, and it was just crazy. I tried to land that thing, and it was overcompensation all the time, even just a bare feather, and it just completely went like 45-degree bank almost instantly. It was crazy. So we'll see what happens at minus 60 on takeoff. I know kind of how it's going to look, although last time on takeoff I was very quick to hit the autopilot, the leveling feature, and then quickly just sort of flew the waypoints at that point. And then landing, I cut it off and got hit by a little bit of a wind and just went nuts from there. So I'm going to probably drop it to minus 80 for the landing, but after takeoff we'll see if we can reach a safe altitude and not kill ourselves. So here's hoping. Well, I'm gonna let the automated system do pushback, take parking brake off. I want to come here real quick, come back into controls and look at my preset manager. So you can duplicate. I mentioned it previously in the last video that it would be nice if you could duplicate it, and then I went, well, I'm an idiot. There is a duplicate. I remember it being there. So essentially what I'm going to do is name this Citation, hit OK, and I'm basically duplicating my, I have minus 60 called out for propellers, and then I have minus 80 for Citation, which I don't think I actually need, and then there's my Citation one. So this one should have all my flight control surfaces now copied in. It does, although I guess it took the default and decided that it didn't want to give me my adjusted rudder settings. Nope, there it is. Never mind. I'm just an idiot and can't read. So there we go. I've got it copied, so now I can come into sensitivity in just a minute, and I don't know why it's all magically down to minus 59. Interesting, but not the end of the world. So we're going to apply and save. So now my Citation one is ready, and I'll be able to save this at the correct minus whatever when I'm ready. Now in my previous video, which may be sort of invalidated now, the update, if it redid anything with the flight controls and the flight surfaces, then this may be a very different video, but I still have a feeling that maneuverability is going to be a little nuts. pulling up is really harsh just due to the high tail, and then going down is not quite so harsh.
By ground, Cessna Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra requesting the end of pushback. Cessna Alpha Sierra.
And we're not really doing, it looks a little off-centered. The whole taxiway system's messed up. That looks terrible. Let's get flaps on. Alright, so we're quickly approaching V1. We're there. I'm gonna wait a little longer because, okay, we're airborne. Gear hopefully up. So I am only steering this by just barely pulling it in. Okay, I've got some wind here that is really throwing me off. And I forgot to slow this sucker down, trying not to crash. And now we're going way high, way fast. So that's part of the problem. It's really difficult to fly because you can see I'm being blown around by the wind. So now I'm compensating to the left by almost 50% stick. I'm going to barely feather a left turn. That was still slow 50% stick. I've got a little bit of left rudder that I can apply. And now I've got to do some countering. So this is a little bit better once I got my speed under some control, other than I'm dipping back down now. Okay. Downtown appearing, though the textures aren't rendering in. Seems like a lot of things got kind of borked in the patch. Alright, now I'm coming out of my turn. I'm gonna slowly... That is just the edge of the resistance field. And that's how it moves. Just, that's 100% down. And I'm gonna level off here. Alright, now left just at the edge. That is the edge of resistance right there. So it's semi-registering. Now I'm going to counteract to the right with 50% stick. So they definitely made a bit of a change here that kind of invalidates the purpose behind this whole video. Because previously this thing was virtually unflyable. So let's get, where's autopilot? Autopilot, yaw damper. Hold my altitude. If they've actually tuned this a little bit to where the control mapping isn't quite so screwed up between every plane. I get every plane's going to handle differently, every plane's going to function a little differently. But by the same token, I shouldn't have needed to drop to -70 to -80 just to control the plane because it was so sensitive and twitchy. It's like you made the minute adjustment and you were just out of control, and that was really difficult to fly anything on. So the fact that they fixed that is very good. I'm curious to see what's going to happen on landing here. We are coming up on halfway to the other airport, so let's zip on over there and see how landing goes. Alright, so a bit of a rough approach. Again, I'm not trying to do this super realistically. I'm really starting to drift quite a bit here as I try to make this approach. I don't know exactly where the wind is coming from, but this is already about 1,000 times better than the approach I had into Aspen. But you can see once the top starts going, the whole plane starts to just go nuts. And that's kind of how this plane is, but and yes, I know I'm floating down 2/3 of the runway. I'm more focused on trying to keep this thing under control. And some of that is I'm near stall, so control is very weak. I'm trying to come in a little slower this time so I can set it down gently instead of before where it was kind of a hit. But this is also what it was doing when I came in at Aspen, because I was coming in a lot faster and I was running into the same type of a situation where I couldn't feather the controls enough to keep it stable, whereas this time I'm much, much better. Bit too much on the flare. Ooh, rough. Rough. Get down there. Every other time I've actually tried to fly this, it gets so unstable near the minimums that you just cannot keep it level to fly. This time, after that patch, I was actually able to control it. So whatever they did in this update, it actually made these planes flyable from a controller at my default propeller plane sensitivity settings. Now, I think I would still, vertical elevators, I think my -60 is still perfectly fine for that because the plane wasn't snapping up and down really crazy like. I still had a bit of an issue with the left and the right, so I think I may want to drop that down to a -70 and see what happens here. So I think that's what I'll probably do. I'll head back over to Dubai at -70 and see how that handles in this profile, because as you saw, once I got it kind of dialed in and got kind of the hang of it, it was much better. I had issues. I'm not going to claim that was a glorious landing, but I didn't have the same number of problems and I didn't have the same style of issues that I've had previously, where the plane was just tip-topping and going crazy all over the place and I just had no control over it whatsoever. So I am going to get this thing airborne again in a not so pretty fashion, so that I can just zip back over to Dubai and try it at -70 here. See, I got a win there. Let's get gear up, get flaps off, throttle back.
Cessna Alpha Sierra X-ray Golf Sierra is 2 miles northwest with Echo to land. Cessna Alpha Sierra X-ray Golf Sierra Tower. While left traffic runway.
So I'm really kind of shocked. I don't know what to say, because that actually worked coming in, and that's a whole different ball game now. I'm gonna start flying these jets and try to do some IFR videos now. If you noticed my climb out, I was able to decently maintain my vertical a little bit, and my left and right, I'm flying all manual stick this time. You saw the rough takeoff in the same direction from Dubai, whereas now I'm able to feather this much better and actually kind of get some stable flight out of it. Alright, so you can see I'm starting to have some issues again. Some of that is my extremely low speed as I come in here. Again, this is not how you fly these planes. Let me see if I can recover it. I screwed up my approach again. Coming into the wrong runway. And now I'm too afraid to touch rudder controls or anything else, simply on the off chance of the toppling, but oof, rough. Really, really rough. I don't feel like that was any better at -70. I still felt topply. I felt like I was a little less rolling all over the place, but it still really didn't feel any better than before. So takeoff at -70 was really good, but the landing was even worse. Now part of that was me really screwing that up. Was trying to descend, but then Forgot I hadn't kicked my speed back up, so that approach was all on me. But being closer to stall, the plane does become a lot more prone to roll, and once I throttled up a little bit, you could see I gained a little bit more control and I wasn't toppling around quite as much. I don't know if minus 70 is still quite right. I think I might need to go to minus 80, just so that I have to use more of the range of the control stick to actually compensate and catch it. I felt like this was still a little bit too twitchy for me, but I just wanted to cover those things and show the copying of your control scheme and how different the controls were between the different airplanes. Now, I was able to make a successful landing in the Citation at minus 60, which is my standard TBM and Cessna 172s and even some of the Bush planes control sensitivity level without any real issue. Vertical speed, I think I'm great at minus 60. That's perfect. But I still think I might need to do a little bit more on adjusting the left and right, the ailerons. So the patch did change things. I never would have been able to land that if it hadn't been for the patch. So take a look over your control schemes if you haven't played when you get the patch downloaded. You may need to make some adjustments. If you've really heavily compensated your jets, then you may not need to compensate to the same extent that you did before. While annoying to have to reset your profile and go do all your sensitivities again, it is very good to see that they have actually released a patch finally that did address some of the concerns. Hopefully we'll get the patch that handles the rudder control, because I really didn't want to touch my rudders on that approach, which probably would have helped with some of my alignment issues. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.